The sun was beginning to sink over the rugged desert horizon, casting long shadows over the small mining colony. Dust swirled in the dry wind, and the air was thick with the scent of hot metal and earth. Jaren tightened the strap on his worn shoulder armor and walked along the perimeter of the colony, scanning the distant dunes. Life here was harsh, and danger often came unannounced. He had learned long ago not to underestimate the unknown. The colony itself was a collection of metallic buildings, solar panels, and storage silos. Miners went about their work with focused determination, oblivious to the endless horizon that stretched beyond their safe zone. Jaren had been hired to protect this place, and he took the responsibility seriously. He carried a sword at his side, a long, well-balanced weapon that had seen more than one battle. Though he tried to hide it, the weight of it reminded him of who he was, a soldier, trained to survive, trained to protect. As he walked along the perimeter, a sharp movement caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a sandstorm forming in the distance. Then, he saw a figure emerge from the dunes, a woman. She moved with an easy confidence that made him stop in his tracks. Her appearance was striking. Tall, agile, with silver-blue skin that shimmered slightly in the fading light. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and full of mischief. She carried no weapon, at least none visible. But she radiated an aura of danger that made Jaren's hand instinctively move toward his sword. "Hope the bulge between your legs isn't the same size as your sword," she called out with a teasing tone, her voice carrying over the dry wind. Jaren froze, blinking. He had heard mockery before, but something about her delivery made it sting differently. He opened his mouth, unsure what to say. I don't think that's any of your concern," he finally replied, trying to keep his voice steady. She laughed, a short, melodic sound that seemed at odds with the seriousness of her sudden appearance. "Good. Just checking. Some soldiers like to show off more than they should." Her teasing made Jaren shift uneasily. But there was no time to dwell on embarrassment. He noticed the tension in her posture, the way her eyes scanned the horizon. This wasn't a casual visit. There was urgency in her step, a purpose in her approach that made his instincts flare. "Who are you?" he demanded, his hand still hovering near the hilt of his sword. "I'm Lyra," she said simply. "And if you value your lives, you'll listen to what I have to say." End quote. Jaren's eyebrows shot up. There was no hint of joking now, no playful tone. Lyra's eyes were serious, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity that demanded attention. He motioned for her to follow him toward the colony center. The journey back was tense. Miners watched curiously as the unusual pair approached, whispering among themselves. Lyra moved with purpose, occasionally glancing back to make sure they weren't being watched too closely. Her movements were precise and efficient, as if every step had been calculated. Once inside the main building, Lyra wasted no time. "There's a faction approaching," she said, her voice low but urgent. "They're faster, stronger, and far more organized than anything you've faced. If you don't prepare now, your colony won't survive." Jaren felt a chill run down his spine. He had faced dangerous factions before, but the way she said it left no room for doubt. He looked around at the miners, many of whom had paused their work to listen. Fear flickered in their eyes, and Jaren knew that he had to act quickly to maintain some control over the situation. "Where are they coming from?" he asked. Lyra's gaze shifted to the dunes outside the building. "From the east. They've been tracking resources, and your colony sits on the richest deposits in the sector. They'll take everything if you let them." Jaren's mind raced. He had to think fast. The colony's defenses were modest, enough to fend off small threats, but not a determined, organized enemy. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Days, maybe less," Lyra said. "We need to mobilize, train, and prepare strategies. You'll need more than your sword this time. You'll need every ounce of human ingenuity, courage, and resilience you can muster." Jaren nodded, already forming plans in his head. He knew he couldn't underestimate the threat. "All right," he said. "We'll follow your lead. But first, tell me about you. Who sent you, and why should we trust you? Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. No one sent me. I came because the alternative was watching your colony fall. As for trust, actions speak louder than words, don't they? Jaren considered her words. She had appeared out of nowhere, her warning urgent and credible. Her demeanor carried authority and skill that could not be faked. He decided to give her the benefit of the doubt, at least for now. Then we act, he said, his voice firm. We start by organizing our defenses. We train the miners, set up barricades, and identify strategic positions. You lead, and I'll back you up. Together, we'll make sure this colony stands. Lyra nodded, a small smile breaking through her otherwise serious expression. I like your confidence, Jaren. Just remember, words mean little if they aren't backed by deeds. Over the next few hours, Jaren and Lyra worked tirelessly. Miners who had never held weapons were trained in basic defense techniques. Barricades were reinforced, and lookout points were established across the colony's perimeter. Lyra demonstrated strategies and tactics that were unfamiliar to the humans, blending alien technology with human practicality. Her instructions were precise, and her presence inspired confidence, even among those who were initially skeptical. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the colony looked different. What had been a group of workers was now a community preparing for survival. Fires lit the encampments, casting long shadows over the sand, and the sound of clanging metal echoed as defenses were finalized. Jaren found a quiet moment to speak with Lyra. You weren't exaggerating about the threat, he said. I can see it in your eyes, you've faced them before. Lyra's expression softened slightly. I have. And I've seen what happens when people don't take the threat seriously. I won't let that happen here. There was a brief pause, and then she added, almost teasingly, and Jaren, try not to let your sword do all the talking this time. Jaren couldn't help but chuckle. Despite the tension, her words brought a small moment of relief. For the first time since she arrived, he felt a connection, an understanding that they were both warriors, each skilled in their own way, and both committed to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Night fell over the colony, and for a moment, it seemed calm. But Jaren knew better. Beyond the dunes, hidden in the shadows, forces were moving. They were relentless, calculating, and ruthless. The days ahead would test every strength, every skill, and every bond the humans and Lyra shared. As he walked back along the perimeter one last time that night, sword in hand and mind alert, Jaren felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The journey had only just begun, and he knew that what lay ahead would not only challenge his body but his heart and mind as well. Lyra watched from a high vantage point, her eyes scanning the horizon, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself a small smile. Jaren might be just another human soldier, but there was something different about him, something that could change the course of the coming battle. And with that thought, she prepared herself for what was to come, knowing that together, they had a chance to face the impossible. The morning sun burned over the desert, as Jaren, Lyra, and a small group of the colony's defenders prepared to leave the safety of the walls. The horizon seemed endless, waves of heat rising from the sand in shimmering mirages. The alien faction Lyra had warned about could strike at any time, and waiting inside the colony was no longer an option. Keep your eyes open, Lyra said, her voice calm but commanding. She moved ahead of the group with ease, her long legs covering the rough terrain in a few powerful strides. Jaren followed, sword secured at his side, scanning the dunes for any sign of movement. The miners and volunteers behind them carried makeshift weapons, blunt tools, metal rods, and a few laser rifles. They were nervous, but under Lyra's guidance, their fear was slowly transforming into determination. The desert stretched on endlessly. Every step was a reminder of the harshness of the frontier world. The heat was oppressive, and the sand made movement difficult. But Jaren refused to slow his pace. He knew that hesitation could mean disaster. Lyra, how far is their base? He asked, raising his voice over the wind. 2 days' travel, if we move quickly, she replied, without looking back. It's well hidden. They've been careful to cover all traces of their movements. Jaren studied her for a moment. Despite the teasing she had offered earlier, Lyra's focus was unwavering. Her confidence inspired the humans, giving them a courage they hadn't known they possessed. He realized that this mission was about more than survival. It was about proving what humans could do when pushed to their limits. The first day passed with only minor hazards. Uneven ground that threatened to twist an ankle, sudden gusts of sand that stung their eyes, and the scorching heat that sapped their energy. Lyra taught the group how to move efficiently, how to conserve energy, and how to observe the land for signs of ambushes. Her knowledge was alien, yet strangely compatible with human instincts. As the sun began to set, they set up a small camp among a cluster of jagged rocks. The miners were exhausted, and Jaren could see the doubt in their eyes. Were they truly capable of facing an enemy so far beyond anything they had imagined? Lyra crouched beside the largest fire they could make. "Listen," she said, her voice steady. "You may feel weak, but strength isn't always in the arm or the sword. Strength is in the mind, in strategy, in the ability to adapt. We have the advantage if we use it." Jaren nodded. He could see the truth in her words. The human spirit was not easily broken. Even ordinary miners, guided correctly, could rise to challenges that would overwhelm others. He looked around the group and caught the eye of a young miner named Soren, whose hands shook as he held a metal rod. Jaren gave him a reassuring nod. "Follow the instructions. Trust your instincts," Jaren said. "If we work together, we'll survive this." Night fell over the desert. The group huddled close to the fire, listening to the sounds of the wind and distant creatures. Jaren took a moment to talk with Lyra in private. "You've seen this faction before?" he asked quietly. Lyra's eyes reflected the firelight, distant and thoughtful. "Yes. They're ruthless. They exploit weaknesses, attack without mercy. Most wouldn't survive an encounter with them. Not without preparation. But humans are unpredictable. That is why I came. Your kind can fight in ways others cannot anticipate." Jaren felt a spark of pride. Despite the teasing and the strange mockery she had offered earlier, Lyra clearly respected humans' adaptability and courage. It gave him a strange sense of purpose. He wasn't just defending a colony. He was proving humanity's worth on a distant, dangerous world. The next morning, the group moved deeper into the desert. The sand was harder to traverse, and the temperature climbed quickly. Small creatures scuttled across the dunes, some harmless, others dangerous if provoked. Lyra pointed out tracks in the sand that humans might have missed, signs of predators and signs of scouts from the alien faction. Every detail mattered. Around midday, a sudden movement caught Jaren's eye. A sand lizard, large and aggressive, charged from the dunes. The miners froze, unsure what to do. Jaren moved instinctively, stepping forward to block its path with his sword. The creature lunged, but he sidestepped, striking it with a clean, precise motion. The lizard collapsed, harmless but a warning of the dangers ahead. Lyra watched, her eyes gleaming with approval. Good reflexes. That's the difference between survival and defeat. Every creature here can be a test. Every moment counts. By evening, they reached a rocky ridge that overlooked a vast valley. From this vantage point, Lyra pointed toward the distant hills. "Their base is hidden in that valley," she said. "See the shadowed canyon? That's where they gather. It's heavily guarded, and they have traps. We need to be careful." Jaren studied the valley. It was vast, filled with jagged rocks and deep crevices, perfect for ambushes. The enemy would expect humans to charge recklessly, but that would be a mistake. Lyra's guidance had taught him to think strategically. As the group descended into the valley, the first real test began. Hidden tripwires and energy sensors triggered alarms, and small robotic drones buzzed toward them. Jaren felt his heart race. This was the kind of danger that could overwhelm the unprepared. "Spread out," Lyra commanded. "Move silently. Use the terrain to your advantage. Don't let them predict your moves. The humans followed, some clumsily, but they adapted quickly under Lyra's instructions. Jaren led from the front, moving carefully, striking drones with his sword when necessary. The miners followed, slowly gaining confidence, as each obstacle was overcome. Hours later, they reached a narrow canyon. Lyra paused, signaling for silence. "We'll rest here," she whispered. "The next stretch is heavily patrolled. Sleep lightly, eat lightly, and stay alert." Around the fire that evening, the group felt a mixture of fatigue and triumph. They had faced real danger and survived. Miners who had been terrified now exchanged glances of pride. Jaren watched them, realizing that even ordinary humans could rise to extraordinary challenges. Lyra approached him, her expression softening. "You're not like the others," she said quietly. "You think quickly, you adapt, and you care. That makes a difference. Not all humans have it, but you do." Jaren looked at her, unsure how to respond. "I'm just trying to do my job," he said. She shook her head. "No, you're doing more than that. You're proving that humans, even in unfamiliar worlds, can survive and thrive. That is rare." There was a pause, and then she added, teasing again but gently, "And don't worry, I still haven't decided about that sword of yours." Jaren smiled, feeling a strange mix of relief and amusement. Despite the danger, her words made the night feel lighter. The following morning, they prepared for the final stretch to the enemy base. The desert grew more treacherous, the heat more intense, and the dangers more unpredictable. Each step was a challenge, but each step also strengthened the humans' resolve. Jaren felt a deep sense of pride in their progress. Lyra led them skillfully, pointing out natural cover, warning of sand traps, and guiding them through areas where the enemy might have placed ambushes. By the end of the day, the distant silhouette of the enemy base appeared against the fading sun. Massive walls carved from black stone, guarded by alien machines and sentries, stood as a daunting reminder of what lay ahead. Jaren felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the first real encounter, and the team had to succeed. The humans had come a long way, but the true test was only beginning. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but firm. "Remember, Jaren, strength is not just in the sword. Strategy, courage, and trust will carry you further than brute force. Are you ready?" Jaren nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and the spark of determination. "Ready," he said. The desert stretched before them, endless and unforgiving. Beyond it lay the enemy, waiting, prepared, and dangerous. But Jaren, Lyra, and the humans of the colony were ready to face it. Together, they would prove that even ordinary humans could rise to extraordinary challenges. And with that, they began the final approach. Hearts steady, minds sharp, and spirits unbroken, moving closer to the enemy base where the real battle would begin. The sun had barely risen when Jaren and Lyra crested the final ridge, overlooking the enemy base. From this height, the scale of the fortress became clear. Black walls rose from the canyon floor, jagged and imposing, with towers and alien sentries patrolling the perimeter. Mechanical drones hovered, scanning the desert for intruders. The alien faction had prepared well, but Lyra's eyes gleamed with determination. "This is it," she said quietly, her voice steady. "We'll need to move carefully. There's no room for mistakes." Jaren nodded. His hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of his sword. Despite the drills, the strategies, and the preparation, the sight of the heavily guarded base stirred a knot of tension in his chest. The miners behind them shifted nervously, carrying makeshift weapons and blinking against the bright desert light. Lyra crouched, pointing to a narrow canyon that led to a hidden entrance in the fortress wall. "We take this path. It's lightly monitored, but it's our only chance for surprise. Move silently, and follow my lead." The group descended carefully, using rocks and shadows as cover. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. Even the wind seemed to carry tension. and Jaren felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. One wrong move could trigger an alarm, and then all their training would be tested in a real fight. As they approached the entrance, a drone swept low over the canyon. Jaren froze, instinct taking over. He raised his sword and struck, slicing the drone cleanly in half. Sparks flew, and the sound echoed across the valley. The other humans gasped, but Lyra did not flinch. "Good," she said in a low voice. "But don't make a habit of it. We need to remain unseen as long as possible." They continued, moving cautiously through the canyon until they reached the fortress wall. Here, the real challenge began. Guards moved along the ramparts, armed with alien rifles that glowed faintly in the morning light. Lyra signaled for the group to split, assigning pairs to different approaches to reduce the chance of detection. Jaren stayed close to Lyra, his eyes scanning the wall for weak points. "We can't fight them head-on," he whispered. "We'll never win," Lyra nodded. "Exactly. We use strategy. Patience. Timing. Watch and learn." The team moved silently, staying in the shadows and avoiding patrols. A wrong step would alert the entire base. But the humans followed Lyra's lead. Moving with a mix of fear and courage, Jaren felt a strange pride in them. They were ordinary people, yet they had adapted quickly, proving their resilience under pressure. Suddenly, a sentry moved directly in their path. The group froze, hearts pounding. Lyra signaled for them to hold their breath. The sentry passed without noticing them, and they exhaled quietly, relief flooding through them. "That's how you survive," Lyra whispered. "Patience, timing, and trust in each other. Never underestimate the power of observation." They finally reached the main gate. A massive portal of dark alloy. Energy fields pulsed faintly along its edges. Lyra studied the field for a moment, then turned to Jaren. "This is your moment," she said. "We need to disrupt the field long enough to enter. You'll do it. I'll cover the others." Jaren nodded, stepping forward cautiously. He focused on the energy field, analyzing its patterns. Using a small device Lyra had given him, he sent a pulse that caused the field to flicker. Sparks danced along the edges, and the gate emitted a low hum. "It's open," Lyra said, signaling the team to move quickly. The humans entered the fortress silently, moving through dim corridors that smelled of metal and machinery. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound amplified. Jaren led the way, sword ready, muscles tense, senses alert. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the base. Red lights flashed, and the hum of energy weapons grew louder. Patrols poured into the corridors, and the humans were forced into action. "Positions," Lyra shouted. "Defend yourselves, but remember precision, not brute force." The first wave of enemy soldiers appeared, tall and armored with alien weapons. Jaren met them head-on, moving with skill and determination. His sword struck with precision, disabling weapons and pushing enemies back without wasting effort. Lyra moved beside him, using her agility and alien techniques to neutralize threats quickly. The miners followed, some hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. They swung their makeshift weapons, striking drones and weaker enemies. Every success built their courage, showing them what they were capable of when guided and supported. In the chaos, Jaren saw one of the stronger alien soldiers aiming at Lyra. Without hesitation, he charged, blocking the shot with his sword and taking the soldier off balance. Lyra smiled briefly, acknowledging his skill. "Good work," she said, and together, they pushed the enemies back further into the fortress. As they moved deeper, the team reached a central chamber where the alien faction kept critical resources. Here, the HFY theme of human ingenuity shone brightest. Jaren and Lyra used the environment to their advantage, creating traps and using the narrow corridors to funnel enemies into predictable paths. Humans who had only recently held shovels were now confident fighters, using their brains as much as their strength. Hours passed like minutes. The team fought with coordination, strategy, and relentless determination. Despite the enemy's superior technology and numbers, humans' unpredictable actions turned the tide. Jaren realized that their strength wasn't in the sword or the weapons, it was in their resilience, adaptability, and willingness to protect each other. Finally, they reached a large chamber, where the enemy had stored an artifact, a device of immense power capable of devastating the colony, if left unchecked. Lyra moved forward, examining the device, while Jaren and the others held off the remaining soldiers. "This is it," Lyra said. "We secure it, and we control the future of this battle. Be ready for anything." The artifact pulsed with energy, casting flickering shadows across the chamber. The enemy made one last desperate attempt to reclaim it. But the humans were ready. Jaren blocked, struck, and parried with skill he hadn't known he possessed, while Lyra coordinated the others with precise instructions. With a final push, they secured the artifact. The remaining enemies retreated, and the alarms fell silent. The chamber echoed with the sound of heavy breathing and the relief of survival. Jaren wiped sweat from his brow, looking at the exhausted but victorious team. "We did it," he said, voice shaking slightly with fatigue and pride. "We actually did it," Lyra smiled, her teasing tone returning gently. "Not bad for humans, Jaren. I half expected you to trip over your own sword." Jaren laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Despite the danger and exhaustion, her words lightened the mood. He realized that her teasing wasn't meant to belittle him, it was a reminder to stay grounded, to keep perspective, even in chaos. As they rested and prepared to return to the colony, Jaren thought about the journey so far. They had faced the unknown, survived impossible odds, and proven something important. Humans, even in unfamiliar worlds, could rise to challenges that others could not. Lyra walked beside him, her steps quiet. "You've done well today," she said softly, "not just with your sword, but with your leadership, your courage, and your willingness to trust others. That's rare." Jaren glanced at her, a mixture of pride and humility swelling in his chest. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. "Or without them." This was a team effort. She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yes. But remember, humans have something the others don't heart. That's why you survived, why you adapted, and why you'll continue to do extraordinary things." The group began the long journey back to the colony. The desert now quiet in the late afternoon. The battle had been won. But the war was not over. Yet, for the first time, Jaren felt a sense of confidence that humans, working together, could face even greater challenges and emerge victorious. As they walked, Lyra cast a glance at Jaren, her teasing tone returning lightly. "Now, about that sword," Jaren chuckled. "I think it did okay today." She laughed, and for a brief moment, the desert seemed less harsh, the horizon less threatening. They had survived, learned, and grown stronger, and together, humans and aliens alike had proven that, even against overwhelming odds, determination, strategy, and courage could prevail. The desert sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting golden light across the mining colony. After the intense battle at the enemy base, Jaren, Lyra, and the small team returned weary but victorious. The artifact was secure, but there was no time to rest. The alien faction might regroup, and the colony's safety still depended on their vigilance. Jaren walked alongside Lyra, scanning the perimeter as they entered the colony. Miners and volunteers had begun repairing barricades and reinforcing walls, inspired by the team's return. Their confidence was higher now. They had seen firsthand that even ordinary humans could face seemingly impossible threats and survive. "We can't underestimate them," Lyra said quietly. "They'll come back. And next time, it won't just be scouts or drones. We need a stronger defense." Jaren nodded. "Then we make one. We train everyone, prepare traps, and use the terrain to our advantage. We've learned their patterns, they won't surprise us twice." The humans worked tirelessly. Lyra coordinated patrols, setting up watch points, and teaching combat strategies. Jaren organized training sessions for miners, showing them how to defend key points and work as a team. What had once been ordinary civilians were now skilled defenders, ready to face the next threat. Despite the hard work, moments of levity began to appear. Miners who had been terrified before now exchanged jokes and smiles as they practiced drills. Lyra's teasing tone returned at times, particularly toward Jaren, whose sword was still an object of playful attention. "You handled yourself well today," she said, glancing at him with a small smile. "I might actually start believing that sword is more than just decoration." Jaren chuckled, adjusting the grip on his weapon. "It's seen a lot. But today it helped save lives." As evening approached, scouts returned with troubling news. The alien faction was regrouping, amassing a larger force than before. Jaren and Lyra gathered the team for a final strategy session. "We've faced them before," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. "This time we anticipate their moves. We set traps, guard key positions, and protect the artifact at all costs. Every human here has a role. Trust each other, and you will survive." The night was tense, but the humans were ready. They took their positions along the perimeter, behind barricades, and at strategic points near the colony's heart. Jaren stayed at the front, sword in hand, ready to lead when needed. Hours passed in silence, punctuated only by the faint desert wind. Then, from the horizon, movement appeared. Alien ships and armored vehicles advanced, sending a clear signal that the enemy had arrived. Red lights glowed from their machines, casting eerie reflections across the sand. "Positions," Lyra shouted. "Remember your training." The aliens moved carefully, expecting hesitation, but the humans did not falter. Jaren led a small group to intercept, using the terrain to create choke points. The miners fought with precision, using traps and barricades to slow the enemy. The desert became a battlefield, but humans used clever tactics to turn the enemy's strength against them. Jaren moved with focus and speed, deflecting attacks and coordinating defenses. Lyra worked alongside him, agile and precise, guiding humans and using her knowledge of alien tactics to anticipate enemy moves. Every victory, every successful defense, built the humans' confidence further. The artifact remained the key. Hidden in the center of the colony, it pulsed faintly, a source of power and potential danger. Protecting it was their priority. Enemy forces tried to reach it, but the humans' strategic positioning kept them at bay. Hours into the battle, the enemy began to falter. Their strategies relied on overwhelming numbers and superior technology, but humans' unpredictability and teamwork proved to be their undoing. Jaren saw an opening and led a decisive strike, breaking through a key enemy formation. The rest of the defenders followed, pushing the remaining forces back. Finally, the last of the alien attackers retreated, leaving the colony safe. Exhausted but triumphant, the humans gathered in the central square. The artifact was secure, the walls intact, and the people alive. Jaren looked around at the team, pride swelling in his chest. Lyra approached, her expression softening. "You've done it," she said quietly. "Not just with your sword, but with your mind, your courage, and your ability to inspire others. Humans are stronger than I realized." Jaren shook his head humbly. "We did it together. I didn't do this alone. None of us did." She smiled, a warmth in her eyes that had not been there before. "Perhaps. But you were the spark. You reminded them of what humans are capable of. Resilience, bravery, and determination. That is rare in the universe." The humans cheered, celebrating their victory, but Jaren knew the lesson was more than just survival. They had proven something important, not just to the aliens who had underestimated them, but to themselves. Humanity, even on a distant and harsh world, could rise to challenges that seemed impossible. As night fell, the colony settled into a cautious peace. Fires burned brightly, reflecting in the windows of repaired buildings. Miners laughed quietly, sharing stories of their experiences, while Lyra and Jaren walked along the perimeter. "You've grown since I arrived," Lyra said, her voice quiet. "More confident, more decisive, and you've earned the respect of every human here." Jaren glanced at her, the memory of their first encounter still fresh in his mind. Her teasing had been sharp, challenging, but it had also been a test. I've learned a lot, he admitted. From you. And from them. Lyra's smile returned, gentle this time. And there's more to learn. The universe is full of challenges, Jaren. But humans have something special. They adapt, they endure, and they never give up. For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the desert stretch endlessly beyond the colony walls. The stars began to appear, twinkling in the clear night sky. And Jaren felt a sense of hope. Despite the hardships, the dangers, and the unknowns, humanity had survived and thrived. You think we're done? Jaren asked lightly, though he knew better. Lyra laughed softly. Done? Hardly. But we've proven a point today. That is enough for now. Rest, recover, and remember, strength is more than a sword. It's heart, it's mind, and it's the will to protect others. Jaren nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He looked at the humans celebrating nearby, faces illuminated by firelight, and realized that he had seen something extraordinary. Ordinary humans had become heroes. Brave, determined, and united. As they returned to the center of the colony, Lyra teased him lightly once more. So, about that sword, Jaren grinned. I think it did its job. Not bad, she said, a playful glint in her eye. Maybe tomorrow we'll see if it's as sharp as your mind. They both laughed. The sound carrying across the desert. For the first time, the world seemed a little less harsh, the horizon a little less endless, and the night a little brighter. Humanity had faced the impossible, adapted, and survived. They had proven that courage, strategy, and determination were more powerful than brute force. And in that quiet moment, with the desert calm and the colony safe, Jaren and Lyra knew one thing for certain. No challenge in the universe could stand against humans who refused to give up. The desert was vast. The threats far from gone, but humanity had earned its place. They had endured, adapted, and triumphed. And as Jaren watched the stars emerge, he felt an unshakable truth in his heart. Humans could rise, no matter how dire the odds, and shine brightly even in the darkest corners of the universe. The artifact remained safe, the colony fortified, and the humans had grown stronger not just in skill, but in spirit. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and emerged victorious. Jaren knew that whatever came next, they were ready. And for the first time in a long while, he felt proud not just of his own strength, but of humanity's enduring spirit. The night carried on, quiet except for the crackling fires and distant sounds of the desert. Humans and aliens alike had proven that courage, intelligence, and heart could overcome even the most daunting of challenges. The universe was wide and dangerous, but humanity had shown it could endure, adapt, and triumph. And with that thought, Jaren finally allowed himself to rest, confident that tomorrow would bring new challenges and that humans would meet them, as they always had, with unwavering determination.